at Lawrence, Kansas, home of the Kansas Jayhawks, the 5th-ranked team in the land, who will be welcoming the 9th-ranked Baylor Bears to Allen Fieldhouse, a.k.a. the Fog, for a conference matchup that will determine who the #1 team in the Big 12 is for at least this week. That game at 4 p.m. on ESPN. And, of course, the site of College Game Day at the top of the hour. Welcome to Countdown to Game Day, covered by StateFarm. Sam Ravech, how we doing?
We're doing great. We're doing great. Excited for a top 10 matchup. It's going to be crazy. Could be a Final Four matchup, by the way, later down the road.
Oh, my gosh, the predictions. Right? I love
Maybe
that.
We'll see.
I'm Christine Williamson, by the way. We have a pretty packed show. Yeah. Some friends stopping by, including King McClure, to talk about that matchup specifically. Obviously, he played for Baylor, so it'll be a good one. But we like to start every show with, you know, what's trending in college basketball. We're going to start with Northwestern upsetting Purdue and Indiana. It was a great week for them. So unranked Northwestern taking down Purdue first. That game was on Sunday, which of course was the big one, as the Boilermakers were a top-ranked team in the AP poll. The Wildcats entered the game 0-19 against teams ranked #1 in the AP poll. So good for them that they were finally able to put one in the win column. Purdue now 3rd in the AP poll this week after the loss. What did you see in that one?
Well, first off, what is this college basketball season? Because we just have had so many upsets. It's pretty crazy. But I will say, for Northwestern, it's been really fun to watch this team. Head coach Chris Collins wasn't necessarily on the hot seat, I don't think, at the start of the year, but it was getting really warm. And on top of all of that, Northwestern lost essentially their entire front court in the offseason of the transfer portal. You had Pete Nance going to UNC, and you had and then you had also Ryan Young going to Duke. So that was you know, you had to kind of figure out how you were going to piece that together. Boo Chase Audige really helped in and came out, and that was really good.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, they also upset Indiana. That was on Wednesday. The Wildcats rallied in the second half. They were down 19 at halftime, and they would go on to win 64-62. What did you see in that matchup?
An incredible first half performance, as well as to close it out. And they did let them back into the game. But still, I'll say this again. Their wins against Purdue and Indiana this past week marked the first time Northwestern has won back-to-back games against ranked opponents in 19 years. So this is a program, by the way, that has gone to just one NCAA tournament, and it came back in 2017, and Chris Collins was the coach there. They're going to have to build a statue for Chris Collins because they're going to be going back to the NCAA tournament again this year. So, yeah, again, this is an impressive team, an impressive culture that I think he's built as well. And it's just been fun to watch. The Big Ten has kind of been like, this is Purdue, and now it's like, well, Northwestern's right there.
That #1 spot in the AP poll, really, people have a target on their back. We'll talk about that in a little bit, just because they've been taking L's. But before we get to that, let's get some women's college basketball in here. And the Fighting Dawn Staleys, right? South Carolina is the only undefeated team left after taking down LSU on Sunday in front of a packed house. And if you weren't there, then you most likely were watching it, because it was the most watched regular season women's college basketball game since 2010. The Gamecocks won 88-64, so it was actually like a rolling. What impressed you the most?
A ton has impressed me a lot with this South Carolina team, but I'll say what head coach Dawn Staley has done with this program, and really for the game of women's college basketball at large, is unmeasurable, I think. I mean, and you mentioned it, 1.6 million people tuned in to watch that game against LSU. And to be quite frank, South Carolina dominated the entire game. And what was even more impressive to me was afterwards, a legendary head coach in her own right at LSU, Kim Mulkey, said, look, South Carolina is at the top right now, and it's just everybody else. And she's 100% right. We all know what Aaliyah Boston has done for this team, likely to be the first overall pick in the upcoming WNBA draft in April. But then you have Zaya Cook, who's leading the team in scoring, this year. And you have Camila Cardoso, a 6'7" player who came over from Syracuse 2 years ago, and she's averaging a double-double this year. Breakout season. So there's pieces around Aaliyah Boston that have really helped this team and will continue to help them as well. If you were to give me the field versus South Carolina today, going into the NCAA tournament, it would be really hard to pick against this team.
It's so crazy that they rolled them like that. You mentioned Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey is used to being Dawn Staley in this season, as she was at Baylor. So she's definitely knows what it takes to be that caliber coach, caliber team. So, I mean, South Carolina just absolutely killing it as the one undefeated team left. Okay, let's talk about the fact that Purdue struggling once again, because as if a loss to unranked Northwestern wasn't enough, the Boilermakers also lost to Maryland badly.
Yeah.
It was 68-54. What the heck happened?
For a 14-point loss to Maryland, biggest loss margin-wise this season for Purdue. They surrendered a 29-4 run over a 9-minute span in the second half to completely fall out of this game. Second straight loss for Purdue overall. I will say Purdue's 9 quad 1 wins is still kind of unmatched in college basketball. The level of concern, though, I have for Purdue, I think, is a different question. The issue for Purdue, at least what we've seen in the last 2 games, has been they have really struggled in the second half. And they rely heavily on 2 freshmen, in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And you played college sports. I think when you talk to, especially freshmen, getting to this point in the season, they're kind of like, whoa, like this is a marathon.
Right.
It's not a sprint.
Right.
And I think Purdue got out to such a good start. And they're, of course, heavily reliant on Zach Edey. But when you have those 2 freshmen that you're asking a lot of, right? I mean, you can speak to that. At that point in the season, it's like, this is a long season.
Right, exactly. Definitely starting to fizzle out, and you don't realize how much it impacts your body and how different it is from when you're in high school. So they definitely, I mean, it's what happens with youth, right? You don't really know what you have ahead of you. So hopefully they're able to figure it out because they're still a really good basketball team. Let's go over to your favorite conference, shall we? The ACC conference, because Pittsburgh has been absolutely rolling, and I would say really surprising everybody in the ACC. They're tied with UVA for the top spot. Panthers are now 12-3 in conference play and have won 6 straight. Like, what in the world is happening?
It's been crazy, right? We're talking about Northwestern. Now we're talking about the Pitt Panthers. Look, I called the Backyard Brawl about 2 years ago when they played West Virginia and got to walk around the facilities, talk with head coach Jeff Capel, and you know what he's done with the program. It's taken maybe a little bit longer than I think fans would have liked, right? But this year they're going to go make the NCAA tournament. And this is a program that has not made the NCAA tournament since Jamie Dixon's last year there in 2015, 2016, right? So that's a long time that Pitt has not been dancing, right? And they actually haven't finished better than 11th in the ACC standings since that 2015, 2016 season. So, I mean, what Jeff Capel has done, yes, it may have taken a little bit. They have struggled the last couple of years, but it's paying off. They're going to have a chance to win the ACC this year, Christine.
That is insanity, especially when you think about the teams that are in the ACC too. UVA, obviously, but then Duke and North Carolina, who have had down years. But thinking about Pitt taking over that conference is wild. Let's go. I mentioned that a lot of teams that are at number 1 have a target on their back and they're taking L's. Alabama, this is almost like what happened during the college football season, right? Because they took an L to Tennessee. So they jump over Houston, then Purdue falls to number 3. Crimson Tide received 38 of the 62 first place votes for the first time at number 1 in 2 decades. And then against Tennessee, they lost 68-59. What the heck happened there?
Let me just say this before we get into Alabama, Christine. Good on Tennessee, right? Because we saw them the last week lose back-to-back games on buzzer beaters to Vanderbilt and Missouri. So good on Tennessee to kind of get back off that. Not great for Alabama on the scheduling side, right? You get the number 1 next to your name, and then you have to go into Thompson Bowling Arena and play Tennessee, the best defense in the entire country. And they showed it. They showed it in that game. But yeah, like who wants to be number 1 this year?
Nobody.
And what's crazy is we've had all of this parity in college basketball, right? But we've actually only had 4 number 1 seeds.
That's true.
So it hasn't been like a revolving door at the number 1 spot. But still, it's kind of a change between really 3 teams right now. And you could make the argument that Houston's the best team in the country. You could make the argument Purdue is. And you can still make the argument that Alabama is, because I think they are doing things, at least in SEC play, that we haven't seen probably since the 2015 Kentucky team.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there's been so much parity in college basketball. When you say those names that have been at the top spot in the AP poll, those aren't names that we're used to seeing at the top spot. So there's definitely a lot of parity. And when teams like this fall, it could be just because these teams aren't used to having this kind of success, as we were talking about freshmen playing long seasons, etc. Okay, so with all of that in mind, let's take a look at our slate of games that we're looking ahead to today. Obviously, looking forward to that Baylor at Kansas game, another Big 12 game, Iowa State at Kansas State. Any other games that you're looking forward to?
A couple of really good games. We're going to talk about the bubble later on, but you're thinking about Memphis, last 4 byes. They're playing Houston on Sunday. Seton Hall, also next 4 out, they're playing UConn today inside Gamble Pavilion.
We are now joined by Mya Peterson, who is a junior at Kansas. Obviously, she's on the ground right outside the Fog. And I'm not going to lie, Mya, the Fog is one of my favorite arenas to go watch a basketball game in. It obviously looks like it's lit out there. Describe the atmosphere for us.
First off, as you know, this has been a crazy week for Kansas students. Starting off with Sunday win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Wednesday we had the Super Bowl parade. And now we're ready for game day, as you can tell, because the best place to be is Lawrence, Kansas right now. So the atmosphere is crazy, Christine.
I like that you said that the best place to be is Lawrence, Kansas right now, because I understand that you almost ended up in Waco, Texas. So describe what happened between you possibly going to Baylor and deciding on Kansas.
Look, this is a hard one. First off, I'll be completely honest with you. Originally, I was going to make my decision based off of who won the national championship in 2020, but because of the pandemic, I was not able to go off of that. So then it had to go to the real thing of what school made me feel like I was at home, and Kansas has that. From the Lawrence, Kansas community to the student body, and then probably the national championship of this KU team.
Yeah, it kind of helps when the team's really good, right? So you have a best friend named Michaela that decided that she feels most at home in Waco, Texas, at Baylor. So how has that affected your friendship?
Yes, Michaela goes to Baylor, and it's a crazy experience because she technically went to a rival high school of mine as well. I went to Prosper, she went to McKinney North, and now because she goes to Baylor, I'm like, is there something wrong with me in the friendship, or what's going on? And she was originally between Mizzou and Baylor, so I guess she picked the lesser of the two evils. But I'm proud to have her here. I'm going to make sure that I turn her into a Jayhawk by the end of this weekend.
I mean, it would help for sure if the Jayhawks got a dub. So what exactly do you think that Kansas needs to do in order to get a win against Baylor today?
Well, with the Big 12, every weekend is a big game. We don't have any misses, but this Kansas team has been building piece by piece by piece. Starting with the candidate for Jalen Wilson, National Player of the Year. You add in one of the best freshmen, Grady Dick, and then a power force in DeJuan Harris as a point guard. No matter who you put on this court, this team knows how to make big plays. And one thing, Christine, that Baylor doesn't have is Bill Self. So I'm going to let you know Kansas is going to do whatever it takes to make sure we protect our home court.
Yeah, Bill Self, goated, to say the least. Okay, so we like to have our correspondents grab the wildest fans, which it seems like there's a lot of wild fans out there, and play a game of this or that. So can you do that for us?
Yes. Let's get into our this or that. This right here is my new bestie. This is Emma Cobalt. She is from Montana, and she is ready for this or that game. Are you ready, Emma?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so the first question is Twitter or Instagram?
I'm gonna go Instagram.
Okay, now Instagram or TikTok?
Ooh, I think I'm gonna go TikTok on this one. Yeah.
And now, would you rather have dinner with Patrick Mahomes or Bill Self?
I'm gonna go Bill Self. Yeah. Not a Chiefs girl, really, so.
Those are fighting words, but okay. Now, Texas barbecue or Kansas City barbecue?
You know I gotta go Kansas City.
Okay. And now, Baylor or Kansas tonight?
Kansas! Woo! Yeah!
And my last question for you is, would you rather marry a Mizzou fan or a K-State fan?
Oh, I'm staying single.
Well, thank you, Emma, for playing this or that. And now, Christine, I have to ask you because I'm a Texas girl, and I'm definitely Texas barbecue over Kansas City. So, Christine, what's your choice between the two barbecues?
This is a great question. I lived in Texas for 3 years. I lived in Dallas, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm taking Kansas City barbecue. Kansas City Joe's, like, there's some really good places in Kansas City that I feel like you can't go wrong with. So I'm gonna go Kansas City, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but this is fine. This is fine. Thank you
Definitely.
so much. Mya, Mya Peterson holding it down in Lawrence, Kansas. It's now time for What If, covered by State Farm. And, of course, Lawrence, Kansas, the site of a big matchup today between the 9th-ranked Baylor Bears and the 5th-ranked Kansas Jayhawks. Now, this is a big matchup.
Huge.
Technically, Kansas is number 1 in the conference, even though Baylor and Kansas are both 9-4. They both have the same conference record. Kansas having one more win overall than Baylor. So this one could really determine who will take over the conference in general, the best conference in college basketball. But let's go back a little bit, because what if we were each to build a super team?
We love building super teams here.
It's going to be really great. I feel like my team is going to win. But I'm going with Kansas because Kansas basketball is one of my favorite. I covered the Big 12 for 3 years. One of my favorite programs to cover. So I'm going to start with somebody that I feel like is very self-explanatory. If I left him off this list, you guys would be confused. He's probably like the most prolific player in Kansas basketball history. That's Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt posted a school record averages of 29.9 points and 18.3 rebounds per game. But you guys would be also probably not surprised that he has the most points in a single game in school history. Now, did you know that Jacques Vaughn played for the Kansas Jayhawks? I, in fact, didn't. I'm not going to lie, but I feel like just because he's obviously, we talk about him a lot now. So just so you know, he was second in program history with 804 assists for his entire career. Now, before this next guy was known for possibly pooping his pants, Paul Pierce was getting buckets in Lawrence, Kansas. Looks exactly the same as he does today, to this day. But he's 10th in KU history and career points, and he's one of a few players to have scored 700 points in their career. Next, this is when you get into the guys that I used to cover when I was at Kansas, and this little guy, he'd probably hate that I call him a little guy, but he is. And he gets buckets.
Yeah.
Frank Mason, number 6 on the list of career points, also 6 on the list in total points in a season, because he used to get shots up and he was completely unstoppable. So, of course, I mean, he has to be included. I feel like he's probably also in like the top 10 players, especially when it comes to his position. And this is my favorite guy in general, Devontae Graham.
Special.
I love his mom. I love his sister. We're all besties. We
guys
follow
are
each
tight.
other on Instagram. But also, I mean, he's known as a trick shot, like distance shot king. But he's also 6 on career assist list, first for most in a season and tied for 5th most in a single game. So the guy, even though he gets a lot of buckets, he also likes to, help his teammates out.
Yeah, that's a special list. Kansas, obviously, a very prolific history.
Exactly.
I'm not saying Baylor doesn't have one, but it's really more kind of in the last 20 years since Scott Drew has gotten there. But there is one player that Baylor has that came before that I have on my list, and that is Vinnie Johnson. Talk about a guy who has the best nickname in all of basketball, a.k.a. the microwave. The guy was one of the best bench players in the history. Averaged 24 points per game while he was at Kansas, at Baylor. Actually started at junior college before he got to Baylor. 24 points per game, I think, is still the leading points per game single season record there. So Vinnie Johnson is my first player on my list. My second player is Taurean Prince, and for good reason, too. I need a little bit of a big guy on my team. Taurean Prince, big man, can stretch the floor. No one better here. 13th all-time on Baylor's scoring list. Shot at 38% from 3 for his illustrious career in Waco. 12th overall pick by the Jazz back in 2016. First team all Big 12 selection there. Also, we're going positionless basketball here. Third is Davion Mitchell, 2021 national champion, 2021 Naismith Defensive Player of the Year, was an excellent defensive player for this team. Had a crucial 15.6 boards, 5 assists. Let's call it what it was, a smackdown against Baylor in the national title game. 9th overall pick in the 2021 draft by the Kings. Davion Mitchell, really special player for Baylor. Fourth is a current member of the Bears squad, and it's freshman phenom Keontae George. Had a tough couple of games the last week or two, but look, if it were not for somebody named Brandon Miller playing in college basketball right now, we'd be talking about Keontae George as freshman of the year. 16.5 points per game, second amongst Division I freshmen. Certainly, last but not least, we got King McClure, our very own King. Want to talk about a guy that you just need on your team. Experience at the highest level, 130 games for the Bears, played over 2,500 minutes in a career, somebody who knows how to win. That's what I'm going with, my all-time Baylor squad. So we got a King and we got a Prince. That's what we go with on our team.
Oh my gosh, wow, how cute. I am surprised that you didn't say that Torian Prince is on the list just specifically because he knows and can explain very well how to get a rebound.
Get a rebound, yeah. He's great at explaining that.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, a big matchup between Baylor and Kansas happening today.
And this big crowd cheers a Baylor win over the Kansas Jayhawks tonight.
It's always tough to sweep a team in this league. If we can go get a big win on the road, it would just make us one step closer to another back-to-back-to-back Big 12 champion regular season.
We're both two teams in the top of the Big 12. They got us at third place. Now we got to, go in and protect our home court.
I feel like they're a three-point shooting team, and that's their specialty. So we can key in on that, not let guys feel comfortable like they did in Waco.
What a game Wilson's having, my goodness. He's risen to the occasion as their best player.
Jalen Wilson's biggest strengths, I feel like, is his confidence with his shooting.
He knows where he wants to go, and he rarely settles. We have to do our part as a collective group, but knowing where he's at. And every game is like a March Madness game, especially at Allen Fieldhouse.
All right. Sam mentioned King McClure
There he is.
as a former Baylor Bear. He obviously knows this matchup very well, and he's now on our show, Magic. It's TV Magic. Thanks, King. So good to see you, per usual. I don't know if you heard our what if teams. What did you think about them? Quickly, can you just tell us what you think? Do you think that my team would have won? Obviously, yes.
I don't think so.
Christina, I didn't see your team. I saw Sam's team. Sam included me. Sam, you're really kind. However, I would have replaced myself with Jared Butler.
Yeah. Okay,
and
fair enough.
That team would have been stacked.
Fair
but
enough.
You're really kind, Sam. And that's why I rock with you. Sam is my guy.
Let's
I rock
go.
with him for that.
What a humble guy. What a humble guy. I will tell you, my team would have definitely be your Baylor team. Okay, since it's getting closer to March, we're going to play a game called Bubblelicious and look at some teams that are on the bubble going into March and have King kind of break them down for us. Look at this amazing graphic. I don't know who made this.
It's amazing, though. It really is.
It's really great. All right, King, let's start in the Big 12 Conference since you know it so well. West Virginia, what do you think about Bob Huggins' team?
Yeah, I think this team has a lot of potential. I mean, when you watch them defend, they defend at an elite level. I mean, typically, we don't see this out of a Bob Huggins team. Their offense is better than their defense. I mean, Eric Stevenson can catch fire. We saw the game that he had against Auburn. We've seen the game, a few other games where he's dropped over 30 plus, the game that I personally called. He can score. He can shoot it from deep. They have options. I mean, Joe Toussaint, transfer from Iowa, is a great option at the point guard. Kedrian Johnson, when he's getting downhill, is talented. But I think this West Virginia team, if they can combine their offense and their defense and actually get on the same page and be consistent, I think they have potential. Don't look at the record. The Big 12 is tough, but they have potential to make a run.
Yeah, I'm with King here as well. Don't look at the record because the one thing that West Virginia does have going for them is they play in the Big 12. So naturally, their computer numbers are going to be really good. Number 25, I think, in the net coming into today. They have 5 games remaining, 3 of them at home. They should win those 3 at home. I think if they do, they should be safely in the tournament.
Yeah, because that 4-9 conference record, not looking great. But if you're playing in the best conference in the country, it's obviously tough to get dubs. All right, let's go over to the ACC. North Carolina, what are you looking at when it comes to this team?
Man, this might be honestly one of the most disappointing teams of this season. And you know what? I don't blame North Carolina. I blame more so the media for this. Because last year, when you look at the team that they had, when you look at the run that they went on, all season, their body of work was not that impressive. They barely made, they were one of the first 4 teams that were playing the day before the tournament actually started. They just happened to get hot, right? They barely escaped the Baylor team, honestly, by a hair of a threat. Barely escaped the Baylor team, and they just happened to get hot at the right time. I think we hyped them up and gave them a little too much credit, so I do not blame North Carolina for this, but they only shoot 30% from deep. They're not a great three-point shooting team. They struggle at times offensively. They play a lot of me basketball, one-on-one, not really getting shots for your teammates, isolation style. It's just not effective. I mean, they have the type of talent to where they get into the tournament, they could be dangerous just because they're so good. Their guards are really good at getting buckets. But I don't blame North Carolina for what they had gone through this season because last year, I think we gave them too much credit.
Yeah, this is why I love King, right? He tells it exactly how it is. He's not going to, this is perfect, King, because you're absolutely right. Last year, they were not a great team, and they returned 4 of those 5 starters from last year. We expected them to be great, and I think that's not necessarily fair. What I can't get over with North Carolina this year is they are 0-9 in quad 1 games. You cannot be 0-9 in quad 1 games and get in the tournament. They're going to have more opportunities to win and get some of those quad 1 wins. They probably should have had one. Ohio State was one, and then they fell kind of to the bottom this year. So you can blame Ohio State a little bit in that. But as far as the computer numbers go, I don't see how North Carolina gets in with no quad 1 wins. I
just want to say to UNC fans, you're welcome, because their last loss was against the Miami Hurricanes. Okay, let's go over to the SEC. And this team honestly has one of the better records out of the teams we're talking about. They're 8-5 in SEC play, 7-9 overall. What are you looking at when it comes to Kentucky?
Yeah, well, this Kentucky team is just a little different. I think there's a few things with this team. They're not the most talented Kentucky roster that we've ever seen. But also, they do not defend. I mean, last year, they weren't a good defensive team. They probably ended up being around in the 30s, according to KenPom. Right now, I just checked the numbers. They are like 101 when it comes to defense. That's not good enough to get you any wins in a tournament, and that's not the level of defense Coach Calipari expects. Another thing that we're not used to seeing from this year's Kentucky team is in the recent past few years, they do a great job of getting in transition, pushing the ball, pushing the tempo, making you play to their pace. This year, this team plays extremely slow. They're a half-court team. They don't shoot the ball extremely well. They're not that great offensively, and that's a problem. If you cannot get in transition, you're constantly stuck in the half-court, but you're not great in the half-court, it's going to cause issues for you. So Cason Wallace is elite. I think he'll be a top 15 draft pick, but they're going to struggle in the tournament.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, King. I think Mississippi State was probably the biggest win of the season that they had this week. Huge opportunity today with Tennessee, right? I mean, that's also a must-win. Yeah. Every game for Kentucky going on here on out is a must-win.
All right, let's talk about what's a must-win in the Big 12. This Baylor-Kansas game obviously going to determine who's at the top of the conference this week. What has impressed you most, King, about this Kansas Jayhawks team?
I think Jalen Wilson. I mean, coming into last year, he had all the things with him off the court, and we knew how much potential that Jalen Wilson had. However, we just had not seen it at that point. I think this year, Jalen Wilson has exceeded our expectations. The way he scores the ball consistently, his confidence, the way he's not afraid to take big shots in big moments. Jalen Wilson has, for lack of a better term, become that guy for Kansas.
Let me ask you this, King, because we know that Baylor's offense has kind of picked it up certainly in the last couple of weeks, and you could probably make the argument over the past, 5 games, Baylor has played like the best team in the country. Best numbers in the offensive adjusted efficiency. So how does that go and play when you go to an arena like this with the crowd the way that it's going to be in game day there? How do you kind of maintain your composure and play?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple because when you're in an arena like Allen, first off, you're not going to be able to hear any play calls. So the whole week before we played Kansas, going to Kansas, we would practice hand signals only. So wow. there was no talking because they know, as soon as Kansas hits a shot, that crowd is erupting. It is loud 90 minutes before tip all the way to the end of the game. So the thing that Baylor has for them that a lot of teams don't is their 3 guards are spectacular. Their 3 guards can go get a bucket. They can create offense at a high rate without a play being called, which plays into their favor. Because now you can take them off the bounce and your guards are elite enough to where you can trust them. Coach Drew, I think it's the biggest area where they've gotten better in. Their guards have been consistent. I mean, Keontae George has not scored the ball well enough, but we know at any moment he's ready. He can go get you 30, potentially maybe a 40-point game, especially in a big environment. He's an NBA player, and that's what NBA players do. So I think that this team, because of their guards and the way that they can get buckets without a play being called, it works into their favor going into an arena like Allen.
Okay, so I just want everybody to understand, because I was talking at the beginning of the show, what it's like to be at a game in the fog in Allen Fieldhouse, how loud it is and how people don't really understand. Like, the atmosphere is so unique. So how would you describe it, King? You've played there, obviously.
Listen, I'll break it down like this, Christine. My freshman year, We went to Allen. It was my first Big 12 game ever. I came off the bench. It was I came in about the 15-minute mark. They had went on like a 20-3 run or something like that. We were down by 20 when I walked into the game. That was the first basketball game. It was so loud, and the first basketball game I've ever been in to where I did not want to go in. And I was a freshman in college. I did not want to play in that moment because we were down by 20. The crowd was going crazy, and there was nothing that I felt like I could have done to help that. So I literally did not want to go in the game. I went in for about 2 minutes and was ready to come out.
Okay, well, hopefully none of your Bears teammates feel the same way as you did that day today. Thanks so much, King, and thank you guys for watching Countdown to Game Day, covered by State Farm. We'll see you guys next week.